Hi, this is Leon Taylor. I thought I'd share my snare drum collection with you. This first drum here is a Mel Taylor model signature snare drum. It's made by a company called Snare Drums, based in Japan. This snare drum is really a copy of my father's old Gretsch snare drum that he played back in the 60s. It's an 8-ply maple shell, die-cast hoops. Canopus has brass lugs. That's their signature lug. Brass is a little bit more resonant than most other metals. It's really a nice looking snare drum. Silver sparkle. Yamaha strainer. This is before Canopus actually had their own. Strainer on both sides, give you a little bit more adjustment. That's it, Mel Taylor model signature snare drum made by Snare Drums. This one here is a Slingerland Gene Krupa Sound King. They started making these back in the early 60s. I checked the serial number online, vintage drums. There's a whole bunch of these made. Some without serial numbers, badges are different. Based on this badge, the black and the brass, they put it somewhere in between 1965 and 1971, somewhere around there. It's a beautiful snare drum. But this was my father's snare drum. He used a lot. You can see the hoops. They call them true tone hoops, I think they call them. You can see how they curve in towards the head. And this was the strainer they made. It's called Zoom-matic. You can see this is a beautiful snare drum. So you don't see these much anymore on drums. It's a muffle. You turn the knob, takes the muffle up against the head or backs it off. That's the inside of the drum. Canopus snare wires. They use nylon straps instead of nylon string. They seem to hold up a little bit better. Here's that muffle I was talking about. You just turn the knob one direction, it pushes up against the head, mutes it, mutes the top head. You back it off, it takes it off the head. It's pretty cool. You don't see any drums with that anymore. That's the Slingerland Gene Krupa Sound King. This is my Camco brass snare drum. Camco was made back in the late 60s through the 70s, late 70s. It used to be made in Oakland. This drum was made in Los Angeles. This drum's seen some better days. You can see, it used to be all brass lugs. I had to change out a few of the lugs. Brass has a tendency to crack. It's a very soft metal. You see there's the original brass lugs. This drum used to have a muffle on it as well. I took that off. The old strainer used to be the shape of the lug. It was round. Had the markings of the lug. There's a little lever on the top. That wore out, so I had to replace that. This is a generic throw off. But you can see this drum's been around. I'll have a look at the inside. This is a great sounding drum. I haven't played it in a lot of years, so I'm not sure what it sounds like anymore. Probably still sounds really good. This drum was my main snare drum for a lot of years. That's my Camco snare drum. And this snare drum here is another Canopus snare drum. This is Zelkova snare drum. Zelkova is the wood, the name of the wood. Zelkova is a hard wood. This shell was carved out of one piece of wood. They take a big chunk of the tree, put it on a lathe, and carve out the shell. So it's all one piece, it's not laminate. Canopus signature lugs, brass, die-cast hoops. This is a Canopus strainer. Built really well. You see, this is a really nice snare drum. There's a breather port. See if I can get a shot of the inside of the whole show you how thick this shell is. You can kind of see it. The way it's carved, you can see how it's kind of rounded. It's not straight up and down, flat. Here's a shot of the inside. Let's see if I can get an angle so you can see the shell rounded on the inside as well. I think you can see that. Canopus snare wires. That's a beautiful snare drum. That's the Canopus Zelkova snare drum. This one here is my snare drum. It's a Leon Taylor signature model made by Canopus Drums. Zoom in a little bit, show you the badge. This shell is nickel plated brass, 14 by 5.5. Everything on it is nickel plated except for the tension rods. The Canopus strainer, also nickel plated. I use these locks on my tension rods just on the back side where the stick comes in contact. They have a tendency to loosen up, so that's why I use these locks. A little ring around the breather hole is nickel plated. You can see this drum doesn't have the little felt pads. You can see the lugs instead of screws. Let's have a look at the inside. Canopus puts a sticker on the inside that tells you the date it's made, the number of the drum, the model number. You can see it's all nickel plated inside and out. It's polished on the outside. Started using Aquarian heads on my snare drum a few years back. This is a high energy. Has a control sound dot in the middle and has a little black around the edge. Cuts down the overtones. It's a great sounding head. A little closer look at the strainer. that's my signature snare drum made by Canopus Drums. So I hope you enjoyed a look into my snare drum collection. Stay tuned for more. You take care.